you. There is a tremendous amount of interest in this hearing. I think I've never had so many members on the House floor come to me and say, we need to have a hearing on Pakistan after the election. And I know the diasporas out in, across the United States have shown a lot of great interest and have voiced that to their members of Congress. I also want to thank Assistant Secretary Liu for testifying here today. I've always thought Pakistan's a very important country, and I've been there many times. It's a beautiful country, but it's often fraught with problems related to terrorism and other matters. And today they're facing many challenges just the same. They just installed a new government after this controversial election. Currently, Pakistan is experiencing a massive economic crisis, including record inflation and an overwhelming foreign debt. Pakistan's domestic situation has a ripple effect throughout the region. It is critical the United States works to promote economic prosperity and domestic stability within Pakistan. I think the people of Pakistan deserve a country where democracy and rule of law are protected at the highest levels. The voters have displayed their commitment to participating in the process, despite allegations of fraud and interference in the recent election. The people of Pakistan showed up to vote in unprecedented numbers, which is very positive. However, I was deeply concerned by well-documented instances of interference in the February elections, including a terrorist attack at a candidate's political offices hours before the polls opened, and also a major internet and cell service shutoffs on election day. These events are serious and consequential. I've called for a full investigation into any allegations of interference or corruption in their recent elections. And I'll be watching closely to see how these irregularities are being addressed. Additionally, human rights in Pakistan must be respected for democracy to thrive. The failure to recognize basic human rights will unquestionably lead to a downward spiral. If human rights are ignored, the prospect of a democratic society will evaporate. Meanwhile, Pakistan's security is at risk as the TTP and other terror groups have become increasingly emboldened. This is a direct result of the Biden administration's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. And we had a hearing just yesterday with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Milley, and CENTCOM Commander, General McKenzie. That deadly and chaotic withdrawal projected weakness on the world stage, and we see from history that weakness always invites aggression. Our adversaries are now testing our resolve, and when they see weakness, they do exploit it. Pakistan has played an essential role in mitigating the effects of the administration's withdrawal on regional security. It remains vitally important that the United States and Pakistan continue to work together to counter terrorism. While challenges remain ahead, the United States and Pakistan must continue to work together to promote regional stability. We also know that if the United States pulls away from our relationship with Pakistan, the Chinese Communist Party will gain even more influence. And while we seek to help nations thrive, CCP is only interested in a one-way relationship of debt trap diplomacy. And Pakistan, in their ground zero for their Belt and Road Initiative, Pakistan is the CCP's ground zero for China's Belt and Road. So anyway, I look forward to working with my colleagues. It's in our best interest to have a vibrant and healthy Pakistan, one of democracy, economic prosperity, and stability. And I think working together, we can work to make Pakistan a success in its role as a key regional security partner. And so that, again, Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this hearing. I know there's immense interest in this across the nation and, of course, in Pakistan itself. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you yesterday for the historic hearing that you conducted with General Mark Milley and General Frank McKenzie, revealing clearly that President Biden did not abide by their recommendations, that the withdrawal, the surrender, the appeasement was solely the responsibility of Mr. Biden. With that in mind, we're pleased to have our distinguished witness today, the Honorable Donald Liu, Assistant Secretary for South and Central Asian Affairs at the State Department. Thank you for being here today. Your full statement will be made part of the record, and I'll ask you to keep your spoken remarks to 5 minutes in order to allow time for members to ask questions, and they too will be held to a strict 5 minutes. I now recognize Assistant Secretary Liu for the opening statement.
Chairman Wilson, Ranking Member Phillips, Chairman McCall, colleagues. When I was a junior officer in Peshawar, Pakistan 31 years ago, I got to see a Pakistani election up close. I got to see the irregularities in that election, but also the courage of the Pakistani people to come out and vote despite threats of intimidation and threats of violence. If you'll allow me today, I propose to say a few words about where the election on February 8th fell short, where we saw positive elements, and what lies ahead for U.S. policy in Pakistan. The day after the elections, the State Department issued a clear statement. We noted undue restrictions on the freedoms of expression, association, and peaceful assembly. We condemned the electoral violence and restrictions on human rights and fundamental freedoms. We condemned attacks on media workers and restrictions on the access to the internet and telecom services. And we expressed concern about allegations of interference in the electoral process and stated that claims of interference and fraud should be fully investigated. If you'll allow me, I'll drill down a bit deeper into these observations. We were particularly concerned about electoral abuses and violence that happened in the weeks leading up to the polls. First, there were attacks against police, politicians, and political gatherings by terrorist groups. Second, many journalists, particularly female journalists, were harassed and abused by party supporters. And third, several political leaders were disadvantaged by the inability to register specific candidates and political parties. On the day of elections, an internationally respected local election monitoring organization said they were barred from observing vote tabulation in more than half of the constituencies across the country. And despite a high court order not to interrupt internet service on election day, authorities shut down mobile data services, the principal means by which Pakistanis access social media and messaging apps. There were positive elements to this election as well. Despite the threat of violence, over 60 million Pakistanis voted, including over 21 million women. Voters elected 50% more women to parliament than they had in 2018. In addition to a record number of female candidates, there were also a record number of members of religious and minority groups and young people running for seats in their parliament. Pakistani voters had a choice. A range of political parties won seats in the national and provincial assemblies. 3 different political parties now lead Pakistan's 4 provinces. More than 5,000 independent election observers were in the field. Their organization's conclusion was that the conduct of the election was largely competitive and orderly, while noting some irregularities in the compilation of results. Pakistan is an important partner of the U.S. We share a commitment to strengthening Pakistan's democratic institutions, supporting the U.S.-Pakistan Green Alliance framework, cooperating to counter terrorist threats from groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and bolstering respect for human rights, including the right of religious freedom. Most importantly, the United States plays a critical role in promoting economic stability in Pakistan. We are the top destination for Pakistan's exports. We have been one of the most important investors in critical infrastructure over 76 years of our partnership. For example, the U.S. government is refurbishing now the Mangala and Tarbela dams, which provide electricity to tens of millions of Pakistanis. Our support for Pakistan over these decades has been in the form of development grants, private sector investment, and humanitarian assistance during the periods of its greatest need, including the recent catastrophic flooding. Unfortunately, Pakistan is facing a mounting debt challenge after the past decade of elevated borrowing, including from the PRC. This year, nearly 70% of the federal government's revenue is expected to go to payments to service this massive debt. Pakistan needs economic reforms, and it needs private sector-led investment that will deliver economic growth for the Pakistani people and not dig their government deeper into debt. Finally, Pakistani people deserve a country that is peaceful, that is democratic, and that is prosperous. We are working every day to support that vision. I thank the subcommittee for its leadership on developing our relations with Pakistan, and I pledge to work with its members as we execute our policy.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. You were precisely on time. And Alexis is going to make sure that we're all 5 minutes. And I want to commend Chairman McCall again. We now have clocks that are large enough for people of age to read. So this is a really startling discovery here. We've really come, hey, we've come a long way to have clocks you can read. But no, this is so serious. And the 70% debt payment is just so horrific, but not only is it catastrophic to the people of Pakistan, but it's a message to other countries that think that they're working with people that they can trust. They're not. They're there for a purpose, and the time needs to begin on mine now, please. And so as we begin, after the disastrous U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan and with the 13 murdered Marines at Abbey Gate in 2021, where does the administration see the future of the U.S.-Pakistan relationship? What are the administration's top priorities for Pakistan?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And again, thank you for holding this hearing. It's obviously of great interest for Americans generally. Clearly, in the audience today, we have lots of people who care deeply about Pakistan. We are at an inflection point in our relationship with Pakistan. As you suggest, Afghanistan has been in conflict for 40 years, and Pakistan has been a country that has been caught up in that conflict. The end of the war in Afghanistan provides us all an opportunity to have a relationship with Pakistan on its own terms. We are committed to doing that. One of the major goals that we have with Pakistan now is to support the Pakistani people as they face this terrible threat of terrorism. Many of the members have discussed this, but this is a country where the people have suffered under the threat of terrorism in a way that I think no one on the planet has had to suffer. The attack in the provinces of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Baluchistan over the past 3 years have grown exponentially. We continue to see attacks being launched from Afghan territory. And you saw a major attack on Saturday in which 7 policemen were killed by the TTP, the Pakistani Taliban. And we call on the Afghan Taliban to ensure that its territory is not used as a launching pad for terrorist groups. Second, we're very focused on economic stability for Pakistan. For Pakistan to deal with its social, terrorism, and political issues, it needs a functioning economy. And we want private sector-led growth there. Growth that benefits the Pakistani people, not growth which fuels profits by lender countries like the PRC. And lastly, we have a long partnership, people to people, with Pakistan. We want to see that grow. We want to see business-to-business relations improve. We want to see the ease of Pakistani Americans to travel to Pakistan and Pakistanis to travel to the United States. Those ties are critical. I have 2 children in university right now. We have many, many Pakistani friends as they've grown up, but also in university. We want to see those numbers expand. Thank you.
And indeed, I'm glad the Pakistani American diaspora is so important, and they've been so successful as entrepreneurs here in our country, and we want them to send a message back of how free market capitalism has such a positive consequence for the people of Pakistan. Mr. Secretary, there have been unsubstantiated allegations that the U.S. government has conspired to remove Prime Minister Imran Khan from power. What is your assessment of these untrue speculations?
Mr. Chairman, I want to be very clear on this point. These allegations, this conspiracy theory is a lie.
It is a complete falsehood. I have reviewed the press reporting related to this, what's called the cipher in Pakistan, the alleged leaked diplomatic cable from the embassy here. It is not accurate. It at no point does it accuse the United States government or me personally of taking steps against Imran Khan. And thirdly, the other person in the meeting, the then ambassador of Pakistan to the United States, has testified to his own government that there was no conspiracy. We respect the sovereignty of Pakistan. We respect the principle that Pakistan people should be the only ones choosing their own leaders through a democratic process. Mr. Chairman, we are grateful that you are holding this hearing today for us to talk about that process. Thank you. And your response is so good because it's so clear that you're correct, and we appreciate so much your clarity on the issue. And good people, indeed, you make a difference. So God bless you. Thank you. And with that, I now recognize the ranking member, Dean Phillips. The chair notes the disturbance of the committee proceedings. The room will be in order, and we now proceed with Council Dean Phillips. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary, I appreciate your observations on the recent election, both the positive elements and also the challenges. In the State Department's post-election statement, the indication was that the United States is going to work with the next Pakistani government regardless of the party. I just want to clarify that has always been the case, correct? Yes, sir. And the department has also expressed concerns about human rights and democracy in Pakistan where appropriate. It has never taken a position on who should lead an elected government in Pakistan. Is that correct? Yeah. That's correct. And the department statement also noted that claims of interference or fraud should be fully investigated. And since that aspect of the statement has gotten a lot of play in the Pakistani press and on social media, could you elaborate on what was intended by that statement? Representative Phillips, Pakistani people, through their constitution, have created a system by which the election commission of Pakistan
Here's the complaints
Of Pakistani people, of candidates and political parties to render judgments about election irregularities. We, as a partner of Pakistan, have called for that to be done transparently and fully, and for those found responsible for irregularities to be held accountable. We can see a process whereby that's happening. The Election Commission of Pakistan has formed a high-level committee, which is now sifting through thousands of petitions from people across Pakistan who have complained about the very same things that we have noted in our statement. We will be monitoring that process very closely. We will be encouraging the government and the Election Commission to make sure that that is a fully transparent process with the Pakistani public.
Mr. Liu, if you just might move your microphone just a little close. It's a little hard for some of us to hear too. Thank you. This is not Pakistan related per se, but it is your area of responsibility. So I want to ask also about India. I know the administration is looking at accountability for the alarming allegations that a government of India official was connected to a murder for hire plot targeting a Sikh American here on American soil in New York City. The administration, of course, recently placed sanctions on more than 500 individuals relating to the killing of Alexei Navalny in Russia on Russian soil. So my question is, are any similar sanctions on or travel bans being considered for those who we believe may be responsible for the attempted murder of Mr. Padan?
Thank you, Representative Phillips. This is a serious issue between the United States and India. The Department of Justice has alleged that an Indian citizen, at the behest of someone working in the Indian government, has attempted to kill an American citizen on American soil. We take this in the administration incredibly seriously and have raised it at the highest levels with India. We are, at the moment, working with India to encourage India to hold accountable those responsible for this, this
Terrible crime. What we can see is that India itself has announced that they have created a committee of inquiry to look into this matter, and we ask them to work quickly and transparently to make sure justice is done. Thank you. With the remainder of my time, I'd like to talk about economic issues. If you could give an assessment of the current economic situation in Pakistan. Of course, a growing economy is good for stability, it's good for this partnership and trade. I know it's still early, but if you could provide an assessment of how you see things right now, I'd appreciate it.
No, not only is it really important for the Pakistani people that they have economic stability and economic growth, it's important for America. We have lots of investments in Pakistan. There are lots of franchises and American businesses working throughout Pakistan. Their success is our success. One of the issues I think that we face with the Pakistani economy is a real difficulty to invest and to trade there. We are calling on Pakistan to reform many of the ways it does business with foreign partners. And in doing that, they will attract American investment, but they'll also attract investment from the Pakistani private sector. Pakistani investors are smart. They want to work in a place where they can make money. And so some of the things that we're calling for are reform of the regulations that will allow repatriation of profits out of the country, cutting down on bureaucratic red tape, and more predictable regulations. If Pakistan is willing to do that, I think you'll see large numbers of American investors flocking to Pakistan. It's a really interesting place to invest if it had the right conditions.
All right. Thank you, sir. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member Dean Phillips. We now proceed to Congressman Rich McCormick of Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to point out that we in Congress have a job to do. This is an incredibly important topic. And I think out of respect for those people who are interested in this topic, the people who want to be disruptive should be gavelled out and removed from this hearing. I think anybody who's earned this place, whether you be in Congress or be a military member or be somebody from Pakistan or be somebody who's interested in this topic, should be respected. And those people who break the rules should be removed from and not be allowed back in future, because this continues to waste our time. And with that, I'm going to move, with your permission, Chair, to have these people removed before I continue.
So ordered.
Thank you. All three that were speaking out. Thank you. They're wearing red in case you can't figure out who they are.
I said not one word. This is very undemocratic. But I will say free Imran. Free Imran.
The committee was suspended by a couple of places to order. And Congressman McCormick will now continue with his full 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been interrupted in the previous hearings. I just want to make sure we have some order. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you, and thank you, Secretary Liu, for your testimony today. Today's topic is very important to me, whether we like it or not. The U.S. future cannot include isolationism from the rest of the world. American leadership will be required for our country's future success and to ensure America remains first in the world. We must remain robust partnerships and alliances with nations that share our interests and values. As nations like China and Russia and violent extremist organizations threaten global stability, it is critical for U.S. interests for South Central Asia countries such as Pakistan and India to continue
developing stable and transparent democracies. That's why I introduced House Resolution 901 with my esteemed colleague from Michigan, Representative Dan Kildee. The resolution affirms U.S. support for democracy and human rights in Pakistan. I'm looking forward to Res 901's consideration later this afternoon as the House Foreign Affairs Committee marks it up. As I am sure you're aware, Pakistan recently conducted the largest election in its history, but these were unfortunately marred by allegations of fraudulent activity and electoral violence.